Hello everyone, how is it going out there? Hope everyone is well. So the reason why I'm doing this video is because despite all of the Tauruses who have disagreed with me about Taurus lacking depth, spiritual depth, a particular Taurus asked me to explain myself. Alright, so I've been thought about doing this video. However, I decided not to do so because, no one ever asked me. I've read the comments and it just wasn't to the point where I felt the necessity to explain myself based on what I said until now. So what I'm going to do here right now is I'm going to give an objective, in general, lesson about Taurus and the solar chart. All right, not your natal chart. At the end, I'll speak something about the natal charts. But for now, I want to give an objective lesson so that everyone can utilize their own perception to determine what it is that they see now that I'm breaking it down as asked to do. All right, so this is going according to astrology fundamentals, astrological fundamentals that all astrologers learn. And this is just a pretty much of a breakdown of how it goes according to the solar chart. So what I mean by the solar chart is basically, despite what type of chart you have when you're born, your natal chart, you're going to experience things that are relative to the actual moment in time. But this lesson is going to be devoid of my personal experiences or constructivism. All right, so let's begin with the sign of Taurus, and you're going to see the diagram here that I've designed for all of us to watch while I break this down. So the sign of Taurus, I'm not going to go fully into what Taurus is about. I'm going to use these traits that we all, I'm pretty sure, can agree on. But then again, this is the astrological fundamentals of Taurus, what we learn. Okay, so Taurus is about self-esteem, self-determination, self-worth, and, stubbornness. I don't got to utilize that actual trait, though, but I want to emphasize the whole self-worth thing. Also, the five senses is rules the throat and the vocal cords, right? So, of course, things relative to food and taste is relative to Taurus. But it also deals with the five senses, right? What you touch, what you see, what you feel. Definitely with what you feel, right? Because Taurus is I possess, I have, right? So I have that, I have that, I have that, I have that. And it's fixed on this. So with that being said, let's move along the astrological wheel based upon the solar chart. So as you can see, I have numbers alongside each of the signs. I didn't fill in all of the signs for a reason. But it goes in the order of how a Taurus will see everyday life based upon the solar chart. So, of course, first house will deal with those attributes, heavy emphasis on whatever planets enter the first house. For Taurus, they will feel that embodiment of self, right? But even without it, they still possess naturally the traits of self-esteem, self-efficacy, self-determination, self-worth. All right, so I get to the third house, right? We get to the third house, and you see the sign of Cancer is there. Okay, so Cancer, the third house is about early communication, not like second house, early learning, not communication, but early learning, right, is the third house. Not so much as like the second house, early learning, which is more involved with self-learning, learning about yourself. Third house is more about the connection of learning with people inside of your community and basic communication skills such as greetings, farewells, just day-to-day what you would call regular conversation is what the third house is about. Now, with the solar chart for Tauruses, it resides in the sign of Cancer. So what that means is Tauruses on a more day-to-day basis will learn from their family unit, okay, in the domestic home. So when you hear that Tauruses are very close to family and connected to family, this is where this comes from. See, at the same time, it should be understood that this is narrow. Their learning experience is narrow to within their own immediate confines. Okay, it's not they're necessarily traveling long distance to learn these things. This is not even necessarily far into academia to learn these things. These are just natural tendencies that they pick up from the household, from being in the domestic vicinity. All right. So connecting with people, which is another Taurus trait, right? It's an earthly trait. You connect with people and you assess how you feel based upon these connections with people. Again, when you develop the five senses, you're talking about things that you can actually reach out and touch and feel, right? Things that you can actually see. It's proof of what you feel, of what you determine, what you assess. So now we move along to the fifth house, right? Now the fifth house is about romance, fun, and leisure. Now, for Taurus in a solar chart on a day-to-day basis, this means that they will have to look at romance and fun and leisure through an analytical scope. It's already set up this way. Now, again, I don't want you to be confused with where your natal chart placements are. There might be an alarm ringing off in you right now saying, oh no, but my romantic life is like this and my romantic life is like that. And if so, okay, I'm not here to beat you up at any time by saying what I say about Tauruses naturally. What I'm saying is, let's stick to the topic and realize that on a day-to-day basis, in the moment, a Taurus experiences the fifth house, which is supposed to be for fun, romance, leisure, speculation, right? Meaning if you're dating, that's what it is. You're dating. You're not really like basing your whole future upon being with this person. However, for Taurus people, there is an analytical scope here because it lies in the sign of Virgo. And Virgo is discriminative while being analytical, right? It's just those are characteristics of Virgo. So what I'm saying here is when in a relationship, you can guarantee there's going to be a scope of observing the partner that Taurus is with to understand it. It's like a study. So in other videos, when I say Tauruses have this thing to where they do reverse psychology, right? That stems from analyzing their partner and whatever it is that they don't understand or want to find out extensive from what they've analyzed. This is why they do the reverse psychology thing. Okay, so I'm going to skip the sixth house. We're going to get right to the seventh house for the solar chart for Taurus people. When it comes to relationships, seventh house relationships, and it falls in that sign of Scorpio. Now, this is where the Taurus begins to obtain depth, and it's through other people. It's because the Taurus can connect with someone else, because that's an earthly construct of Taurus, is to connect to ground, right? So it is when they get into relationships with other people that they get to understand some type of depth because the sign of Scorpio is there. Now, this person does not have to be a Scorpio for them to understand the psychoanalysis part of people, right? Because that's where the depth of Scorpio lies. Going from inward to bringing it out. What makes people tick? What makes people move? So again, the whole reverse psychology thing, this is again where Taurus picks this up. Because when they engage with people, they get to understand that, okay, to further understand what I thought I knew from the third house, I must go inward and out to see what else lies within this person. Okay, so what happens here is when Tauruses get to the seventh house of relationships, and this is usual, this can be business now. This can be business and it could be romantic. It just doesn't mean a significant other that they're with romantically. Right? This goes with all relationships that Taurus get into. What happens is they carry what they've learned from communicating from their home unit with them into these relationships. And this is where they either will be stunted in their growth, or they will grow from the depth of the relationship. So when I say Tauruses are surface people, I mean alone by themselves, they are surface people. It's not until they get to connecting into relationships that are validated, that mean something, that they start to experience depth, and that is due to being in a relationship with someone other. It's outside of themselves because, again, Taurus's natural characteristics are self-worth, self-determination, self-efficacy, utilizing the talents that they possess themselves. It not nowhere says that they are interested in what you possess, right? It is a self thing for Tauruses. Okay. Now, I'm leaving out the part that they can be good nurturers and devoted partners, right? And again, this is why I say this is where the seventh house will either stunt their growth or develop them into some type of depth, but it will be through the relationship, because they can find out in the seventh house that the things that they learned in family, in the third house that are relative to family in the immediate vicinity of the home life, that it's not the same as experiences with relationships. And of course, this will mean romantic. However, this also means business relationships as well. All right. This is where you can hear that, Tauruses will give the shirt off of their back for people. And when it's not reciprocated, this is when you can see a Taurus anger or feel that they've been done wrong in some type of way. Some of their most profound experiences come through relationships because, again, that is where the depth comes from. That is where this self-involved individual by nature goes out on a limb or puts themselves in a situation where now that it's about other people. And if they don't get that reciprocated, you got to understand this is a sign that has to feel that they are valued. It's a natural thing that they're born with. So if they feel that they're not valued in the situation that they're with others, this is a detriment to the Taurus sign, right? However, if you hear their stories after being in relationships, if you see their stories after being in relationships, I'm not saying that all of them are going to be in turmoil. However, the ones that are, you get to hear the depth of a Taurus because of what they went through. Now, moving right along, I don't want to put too much emphasis on that. Moving right along into the 8th house. The 8th house is about joint resources and a partner's earning potential. Okay, now it has been said that Tauruses do like wealth and material items for sustainability more than anything. So I'm not saying someone said, I don't even believe I used the word superficial. Perhaps I did. If I did, correct me if I'm wrong, but someone said that I said that they're superficial. I'm not saying that Tauruses are obsessed over finance. What I'm saying is that it is a sense of security for them to have it. All right. And they will strive for it. Now, when we get into the 8th house, which comes right after the establishment of being with a significant other, again, this can be business or this can be romantically. The 8th house is focused on joint resources, meaning this individual who is naturally born on self-worth, self-determination, self-efficacy is now joined, resources included, and they are focused on their partner's earning potential. Now, for some Tauruses, this can be beneficial because they do like stability. They do like resources that can make them comfortable because there is enough. Right? Now, at the same time, there's this high sense of self, that says, or may ponder and say, well, why does it have to be a focus on what my partner does or what my partner earns or this, that, and the third for us to be together, right? Or you may be in a situation where, or see a situation where the Taurus is still so overwhelmingly selfish and about self that it can either drain from this 8th house connection, right, excessively, or it can just be to the point where they're not fully engaged in it for that purpose of the joining of resources, or the joining of, or the worrying, how should I say, of their partner's earning potential. It's more about them. So even in a situation, you could see a Taurus like seeing their partner's earning potential as something that benefits them, because that's how they look, that's how they are naturally constructed, to see how they value, how they are valued when they are in a situation with people and in things. So now the sign of Sagittarius, with it being in the sign of Sagittarius, this is what I'm saying again, for a Taurus, being with someone or being in relationships can have the potential to stunt their growth or develop their growth, because the sign of Sagittarius means the quest for knowledge and new experiences, right? So is this Taurus traveling and doing things with their significant other or their networks of professional groups, professional relationships? Are they on a quest for knowledge while doing so? Are they seeking new experiences when they're doing so? Or are they stubborn to the point where they like the learning style that they've learned in their family unit in a sign of Cancer, and that's what they're used to, that's where they're comfortable, that's where they know where their nest egg will definitely be when friends and business relationships fail. So perhaps they don't want to take it to that level with their business partners or their significant other, right? And again, I didn't put Gemini in the second house there, but Gemini on a daily basis for a Taurus means these ideas cross their mind that they want to do things. They have a lot of ideas and they may want to embark on all of them. However, perhaps one will suit them well or two will suit them well at one time. Now, whether they embark on these things or not is a different story, right? And it will pertain to seventh house. This is without being romantic. It will pertain to the seventh house, the connections that they make there, the relationships that they establish there, and carry over into the eighth house. Because even if it's a corporate situation, the extent to how much they can experience in a quest for knowledge will depend on the strength and the resources of that corporation. You understand what I'm saying? So now to skip over into the 11th house, where the sign of Pisces is. Now, Pisces is the epitome of spiritual depth, okay? And the huge difference between Pisces and Taurus, and why I say the things that I say, well, why I said that particular thing that I said, which every Taurus does not agree with me with, is because Taurus is naturally a sign that says, I possess, I have. I touch, I feel, therefore I know it to be true. This is what is meaningful to me because I can attach it, I can attach value to this. When you have Pisces, which is a sign of many things, however, one of the characteristics of the sign Pisces is surrender. Surrender, meaning I can let go of all of this. None of this defines me. It's cool, I understand it, and I actually learn from it because of Pisces through the solar chart. Third house of learning and communication is the sign of Taurus. So connecting with people and being grounded is how Pisces learn on the earth plane. However, Pisces is from the other world. Water sign, 75% of the earth, 75% spiritually, which meaning it's not physical, it's not as tangible as Taurus is. It does not base or put emphasis on the five senses as much as Taurus does. It learns through it. However, it does not put as much emphasis there. It's not the primary source of spirituality when it comes to Pisces. Pisces is the sixth sense, the things that are not seen, the things that you cannot touch, the things that you cannot taste. Okay? Huge difference there. Again, this is not my opinion. This is not my take on it. This is the fundamentals that you learn in astrology. Okay, so it's not even me putting my own spin on this. Now, the 12th house, which follows the 11th house of spirituality, the epitome of spiritual depth for Tauruses in the solar chart, is the sign of Aries. Now, again, it's like set up already. Aries for them is in the 12th house, which is ruled by Pisces. This is where the spiritual depth in growth depending on the person's what they've learned and are willing to accept and let go of is the 12th house as well, right? Self-renewal or self-undoing. And I'm going to give an example of what I mean afterwards, which comes from my observation, but it gives you a more detailed explanation of what I'm saying right here, is that it falls in the sign of Aries for Taurus. So Aries is about the individual. It's about, again, the self. It's the baby of the zodiac, meaning it's curious in its learning endeavors in the way that it wants to move and take action to learn. However, when you place this sign inside of a house that is about isolation, that is the part that connects. Aries being a self-individual sign, and the 12th house being a sign of a house of isolation. However, Aries is about ambition and energy as well. So how well this Taurus can refrain from actually darting out to experience more and more and more will depend on what they've experienced inside of the 11th house. Now, the 11th house is about networks that bring your dreams into fruition, right? It's also about revenues from corporate endeavors. So the reason why I made a distinction between the 12th house and the 11th house is because the 12th house, you're supposed to gain from the 11th house. So whatever it is that this Taurus is experiencing in the 11th house of Pisces, they're supposed to profit from it because it is the second house, which is a money house. It's the second house from Pisces. You understand what I'm saying? So how well does this Taurus tap into isolating, and what do they hold on to, and what do they discard while inside of the 12th house? Now, planets entering these houses will affect or impact the situations and the experiences that this Taurus person has, right? So now I'm going to give a detailed explanation about a Taurus woman that I know, that I've observed. They're in the entertainment industry, and I've observed them in their immediate Cancer environment with their family. You can see the richness and the culture when they interact with their family members. Like, it's evident, it's clear as day. And you can tell that it's embodied in them. So even though they go out into the world, which they do, they're in the entertainment industry and it's vivid. You know what I mean? To an extent, I'm gonna get to that in a bit. But again, you can tell that their culture derives from their family unit. It's clear as day. So now when they get into the 5th house, I'm not exactly sure how they experience that. You know what I mean? However, when it comes to the 7th house, I do see them building business relationships. Okay, and they do have an understanding of those business relationships because they analyze them. Like they pretty much investigate it like a Scorpio would. You know, and I found this out by being inquisitive. Like, well, okay, well, how's that going? And what's going on with this? What's going on with that? And they tell me through their investigation of the matters at hand, they find out like, okay, well, this is going this way because of this. This is something that they learned, though. This is not something that they knew offhand. This is something that they actually investigated. Okay. Now, the 8th house, I've seen them travel. I've observed them travel. And, you know, they look lively. They look like they're having fun. Even more when inside of the 11th house. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, I see them at party events and stuff like that, shows and things of that nature, and they're having a great time, right? Because Pisces is also the sign of glamour, right? It's the sign of the stage. It's the sign of entertainment, right? So at the same time, it's also the sign of deception and illusion. And this is where the 11th and the 12th house kick in extremely for the Taurus sign, because although this person is dancing and laughing and having a good time with friends and cohorts alike, right? Is there a spiritual depth? Is there a spiritual connection? Does it run deep? Because it can be what it can be. The entertainment industry is the sign of Taurus on steroids. And what I mean by that is the 5 senses overwhelmingly excessive to the point where it can actually drain a person. Now, Taurus is very sturdy. They have great endurance, so they can weather the storm. They can battle it out, right? My thing here, though, is what do they learn inside of that house, inside of that sign, that when they isolate on their own, they say, okay, I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to let go of that because this is what I've learned. And now I want something more spiritually because this is maybe not what I expected. So, I'm kind of like putting a theoretical lens out there. Now, what I've observed from this particular person that I'm talking about is that when they do come to the 12th house, I've seen them in 12th house type environments where the family is not around and it's just them by themselves. And they're in the bed. 12th house is about bed pleasures. Now, this is right up a Taurus's alley at the same time, right? Because Tauruses do like to lounge around and just chill out and be lazy sometimes, right? This is not my personal spin. This is something we learn in astrology as well. Now, again, I see this person isolated, 12th house style, by themselves, not with a significant other, not with their family members, not with anyone, by themselves. And what they do is they're either reading books that enlighten them, or they are watching tutorials and lessons on things about like astral projecting, astral jumping, different dimensions, all of those enlightening type of things that deal with not the things that are not relative to the five senses, that is naturally attributed to the Taurus sign. So this lets me know, without me even speaking to them about it, like I don't want to be invasive, I don't want to be intruding on their private life. However, this individual that I'm speaking of lets you inside of their private life. However, it's also done, the way that it's done, it's not done for everyone to see. It's in like a VIP type of way, like the stories on online interactions and stuff like that. If you're looking there, then you'll see it. You know what I mean? But it's not like out there for everyone to know. And that's another way to connect to groups and networks in the 11th house. It's done in a Piscean way, though. Confidential information is behind the scenes events. So I see the solar chart acted out through this Taurus individual all the way through from house 1 to 12. You know what I mean? And again, I don't intrude to ask, well, how do you feel now? Or how did that event make you feel? Or this, that, and the third. I just observe. You know what I mean? It's a part of my surrendering fabric, and I can also sense from observing that this Taurus individual is surrendering in some type of way when they're in isolation. All right? Now, I'm not telling you that this Taurus is deep. I'm not telling you that this Taurus is not deep. You can also view this for yourself and view your own perception. You can get in the comment box and say what your own determination of that story is, if you will. You know what I mean? I don't know this Taurus's person's natal chart. It would be interesting to know. However, I've seen the interactions through the solar chart is pretty much what I'm saying. So this is why I say Tauruses are surface type people. They're not deep people. And whether they learn about depth and things of that nature, again, look at this chart. If you're a Taurus, look at this chart. Now, I've seen people say stuff like, well, I got a Saturn in Pisces, I got a Venus in Pisces, got a Moon in Pisces. I know what you're talking about. At the same time, understand that when the majority of my videos, when I'm talking about, Scorpio man, Taurus woman, etc., I'm talking about sun sign characteristics. I'm not talking about natal charts and all of the, composite charts, the symmetry chart. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. When I do talk about that stuff, you'll see it phrased in the title when you click on it. But if I'm not talking about that stuff, what you're seeing is the actual Taurus, Scorpio, for example, compatibility. It's based on the sun signs. And I just explained to you what the Taurus sun sign pretty much is described as self-worth, the self, the five senses, right? And I possess is the key phrase for Taurus. All right. Now, the epitome of spiritual depth, again, is the sign Pisces, which revolves around surrender. So when you hear the 12-step program, right? Pisces is ruled by the 12th house. The 12-step program says, I leave everything up to something that is higher than myself, right? I surrender, I let go. In understanding that it's something higher or other than myself that guides this process, right? 12-step program. Another explanation of that is the 12 apostles that walked with Christ, right? The book of Acts is about Piscean depth, spiritual depth. I'm going to let go of all of my possessions, right? To embark on a spiritual journey in belief of knowing, in belief of the things that I cannot physically touch or see, taste, etc. Right? And those were how many? 12 apostles ruled by Pisces rules the 12th house. All right. So there goes my lesson for the day. If you're interested in more lessons like this, I suggest you subscribe to my other channel, which is Private Investigation Enterprises. There I will be doing and uploading more videos that are like this. It would behoove you to catch me when I'm in my developing stage, because you could probably get a request done there without me like shifting the service to Patreon, for example, which I can see might happen later on when people get accustomed to this and my inbox just starts overflowing and it gets overwhelming. But yes, I'll be doing more stuff like this on that channel. So I hope this helps. I also want to say, like, it's not my intention to bash Taurus while saying this, that, you know, they lack spiritual depth. You know, it's although, you know, I mean, lashing out at me, I can't apologize for saying what I said. But lashing out at me, I would think it's not the greatest thing to do. You know what I mean? What is cool, though, is asking me to explain myself of what I mean. And then you can reply and say, oh, well, I believe I'm spiritually deep because I have this here and that. Or, you know, just extend the conversation to where we learn. You understand what I'm saying? We can teach each other, but to lash out at me and discredit the channel and stuff like that is like something you will find that some Tauruses do agree with me. And this is how, you know, we all have different natal charts. You know what I'm saying? So a Taurus that does agree with me, they may have the exact natal chart of what you're seeing right here in this diagram. And that's why it even applies to them even more, right? But again, open up some dialogue, you know, asking me to explain myself. I think that was a great way to get me to actually do this video, because despite the people who disagreed with me, I wasn't going to do the video. You know what I'm saying? So again, I can't apologize for something that I determined to be true. You know, if you disagree, tell me why you disagree. Tell us why you disagree, so we all can learn. You know, if the ratio is 110 likes to 20 dislikes, you know, obviously you got to put in a bit more work to explain yourself, right? Yourself in this, Taurus people. So again, I hope this helps. This is an objective in general video for everyone to look at for your own self. And you can open up any astrology book that you've purchased or that you already possess and see if this diagram relates to that or not. Like, this is what we learn. This is what all of us profess. You can go on YouTube, and I'm pretty sure if you search these terms, you will find the same things from other astrologers. All right, I'm out.